So that was my confidence came from that. And then while I was in that transition, I eliminated every single distraction that I could possibly think of. And I played this audiobook over and over and over again. It's by Napoleon Hill and it's called Think and Grow Rich. And I literally imprinted that audiobook into my brain. My life experience definitely helped me to be able to succeed in that transition. And then just having that courage to build it up. And then it turned out to be an even more successful career than when I was working in IT and seamlessly easier. Like I always say that I haven't worked a day in my life since I left my IT job. And so I guess you just got to find your place in the world and what is the best fit for you. And I feel like if you can find that thing that's the best fit for you, then I think everything does kind of come together.
As men, we tend to identify ourselves with our careers. And while that is a large pillar of our lives, it's not the only one. By diving deeper, we can see that our lives are made of so much more. We need to take into account our physical, our spiritual, emotional, financial, and our relationships, just to name a few. So, how do we identify ourselves in these pillars as an indication of our values and our limiting beliefs? Well, today, my guest shares his life changing experience that led him from the corporate world to changing the lives of thousands of people by helping them see that they are much more than they've ever dreamed of. Now, before we get into all that, I want to remind you if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, a husband, and an entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in our Band of Brothers group mentorship program. We're a group of ordinary guys working towards living extraordinary lives. And you can find all this information at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan Dumonso. Before we get started, let me ask you a couple of questions. When you think about the following life pillars, which one do you struggle with the most? Is it your financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, about career, or your relationships? Now that you have one, what is the story behind how you identify yourself with that pillar? We have so many stories that shape our lives that most of them become unconscious because we've told them for so long, and they actually become part of who we are, better or for worse. Sometimes the only way to see through that is to hear these stories through a life-changing event. And that's exactly what my guest had lived through today and it's going to talk about today. So allow me to introduce my guest. Jai Bazevski is a life coach and personal trainer with 13 years of experience. And he transitioned from an IT career into the health industry after an almost fatal cardiac arrest and a rare heart condition that ultimately changed the path of his life. He's the owner of SQ1 Fitness Gym in Sydney's West, and from 2010 to 2021. And now he resides in Northern NSW, helping people as an online coach overcome their limitations and develop a strong mind and healthy body through his mindset and fitness coaching. Welcome to the show, Jai. How are things today, brother?
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I really enjoyed about reading about your story is just truly you have a very unique hero's quest. And we'd always talk about on our show about everyone being on their own journey, their own quest. And so I would hope you'd like to tell us a little bit about a time in your life when you knew things had to change, that there was an experience there that really shaped who you are today and the work that you're doing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it was in 2008 when I was 27 years old. I had a great career that had been going on for over a decade at that point. I was doing really well on paper, but I was burning out and not enjoying it as well. That was when I was working in IT. IT was something that was never a passion for me. I finished high school in 1998. So that was just when the IT industry was completely booming, if you recall that time. And there were opportunities all over the place to get into the industry. And at the time, when I was in year 12, I had a part time job where I was answering telephones in a call center. and it was for a finance company. And when I finished high school, my manager had said to me, "Why don't you go downstairs into the IT department and go talk to this guy, because they're giving out traineeships and it might be an opportunity for a career for you." And I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. So I went down there, spoke to this guy, had a meeting, had a great rapport, ended up giving me a 3-month traineeship, which turned into over a decade-long career. And it was great over that time because I was learning new things, and it was a new industry, and it was fun and exciting, and it was great. But after a decade of doing something that wasn't really my passion and my purpose for life, I kind of burnt out on that. And so the last sort of 3-4 years of that were pretty miserable, to be honest. And that was really that turning point for me, because I was starting to look for other things to fulfill me in my life. And not that your work should be the fulfillment of everything, but it should be a big part of it, especially if you're going to do 8 to 10 hours a day of your whole life, working in this space. So for me, I always wanted to be a business owner and do my own thing and be independent. So I was starting to research, just being on my own and doing my own thing, opening a business, whether that be a franchise or just starting something. And I just had no idea what to do. And I just felt like the pressure and the stress from my job was just getting a little bit overwhelming for me. And I wasn't taking care of my health at that time. And so everything was just kind of in a decline. And I think that's the alarm bells that we need to look at to say, okay, I need to change something in my life. And, I'm that stubborn kind of guy where I still didn't change anything until my health actually hit rock bottom. And that's when really everything started to change. But I had a cardiac arrest in 2008. And over that time, that was such a transformative period for me, because I went from not really paying attention to my health to having to have heart surgery and be in hospital, and all of these severe health complications that were completely left field for me. And so when all that came up, it really made me reconsider my life and contemplate my life, because I was 27, as I said. And so to have all of these health issues, when you're in your 20s, you think you're invincible. And for me to have that transition from I'm invincible to holy crap, life is almost taken from me like that, it made me think to myself, you know what, I can't live another day not enjoy myself, because life is a gift, and that's something that really sort of resonated with me during that time, was that life is to be really appreciated. Like when it's almost taken from you and you get so close to dying, it really makes you contemplate life in general, and it makes you appreciate it more. And so that was really the turning point for me, where I was like, okay, if I'm going to be alive, then I'm going to make the most of it. And so for me, it all came down to career, because I thought, that's where you make your money, that's where you make your living, that's where you spend all your time. You want to love what you do. And so I thought to myself, well, what do I love? What's something that I can go out and do on my own as a business that I'm not going to get bored of or sick of or tired of, because I have to thrive. And it was always leaning towards the physical side of life, fitness, outdoors, being basically the opposite of being in an office working in an IT company. And for me, that was to go out and go into fitness, because when I was in high school, there was something that I was interested in doing. It was either physiotherapy or personal training, something within that space with the human body. And so I thought maybe personal training could be a great thing for me to try. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. So I just cut all ties with my career, literally burnt the bridge, and just went for it. I studied to be a personal trainer in the evenings while I was still working my other job. And then once I qualified, it took me 6 months to qualify. And then I basically just threw it all in and transitioned. And then I started doing outdoor PT and doing boot camps just out in the park in the local area and stuff. And I just started to grow like that. And what I realized was that even though I had done all of this certification in personal training, I still didn't have what I needed to help people to have those transformations. And so my life experience is what really came in and helped me and guided me through that. And I ended up doing a life coaching course, a diploma. And those two, the diploma in life coaching and the certification in personal training, when you put those two together, that was just really the winning ticket for me to be able to help people transition through whatever they were dealing with and overcome those limitations in order for them to get healthy and lose weight. Because a lot of the things that were holding people back from losing a lot of weight and changing their health were limitations that were in their life that were not related to the obvious problem that they come to you with, like, I'm fat and I need to lose weight. It's like, yes, that's the problem, but there's so much other stuff going on in your life that we need to dive into. And that's where the life coaching really helped me to kind of, figure all that out and go through that maze. And so once I did that, put those two skills together, then my business started to do really well. I met my wife at that time. She was also in a very similar experience to me, where she was working for a financial company in an office, not overly passionate about it, loved the health and fitness space. I somehow convinced her to do the same thing and to get certified as a personal trainer. And then she came on board and we both quit our jobs and we just started this business, which ended up, we ended up opening a gym for 10 years and just had amazing success. And it just went so well. And we've helped literally thousands of people in that time. And it's just been a great experience. And I feel like my life I almost feel like my old life it's almost like a whole nother life. It's like I can't even connect the dots anymore. It's like I've got this life now and then there's that life that I had before, and it's completely separate. And so I'm so happy that I made that transition, but it really, unfortunately, it took rock bottom for me to make that change. And so ever since that, and I acknowledge that, and so now I always try and stay encouraged enough to make the changes when I feel they're needed, rather than waiting for things to get really bad and for me to get upset, depressed, whatever, and then make those changes. And that's something that I speak of a lot as well with my clients and just in general, to help people to, if you are struggling, if you are in a bad place, like, now's the time to move on it. Don't wait for yourself to go to that rock bottom, or don't wait for things to get really, 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 really bad that you can't climb out of it. Make the change now, have that courage, and just go for it, and you will succeed. And so that's kind of been my driving force ever since 2008 up until now.
Oh man, that's incredible. That's just love that. I was just taking a ton of notes here on some of the stuff you were mentioning, and I just, when I started the intro and talked about, all these different ways that we can identify and look at ourselves. And you're so right that we spend so much of our lives in a career of some form, whether we're an employee or self-employed, business owner, however that is. But when we have that so compartmentalized and separated from the other parts of our life, even though we may be good at it, it doesn't necessarily fulfill us. And I think that's a trap that a lot of us fall into, right? We may be good at something, and maybe there was a time in our life that, maybe you enjoyed the IT aspect of it in the beginning. Like you said, it was exciting. It was new, especially in the late 90s, and as things were starting to change, and that was exciting. But after a while, doesn't become fulfilling anymore. And how long do we stay? Many of us will stay in careers or in businesses that have long past serving us any longer. And until we find that peace. And, the other thing I made a note here is you talked about how stubborn you were in wanting to make that change, and it's almost, it's a pretty common theme. And a lot of people that I talk to is that we have to have the rock bottom, whatever that looks like for all of us, before we finally make a change. And your work in making and finding out, how do I make career, because it is such a big part of our life, and blending it into the things that you love. And so talk a little bit about, you did that with, obviously fitness was important to you and that, but what was your process of really figuring that out and going and getting to an understanding of how you could really make a financially supportive career in this other endeavor? How did that all come to play, and what did you do with that?
Yeah, that was probably the most scariest part of it all, because, as I said, I'd been in this career for over a decade. So I had a nice, strong income, and they were paying great, and still do in IT. The salaries are amazing, and I had all the perks, and it was a cushy job. And so that was like the hardest part about letting go of that, because it was stepping into that unknown of, I'm not going to be able to make my way financially. And I had to really just take that leap, because again, like, I had hit rock bottom so low that I thought, even though I'm taken care of financially right now, it's not fulfilling enough. It's not doing, what I thought it would do. I thought making all the money that I could possibly make would just make me completely content and happy regardless of what I was doing. But clearly that was not the case. So I was absolutely not happy at all with my current situation, even though my bank account was strong. So yeah, that was definitely the hardest transition. And I said to myself, if I can go from a high school kid with, no university education or anything. And I didn't even pay attention in school, to be honest. I wasn't the most academic student. And to go from that and then to have a quite a successful career in IT, I thought, I built myself up off my own merit. I went into those meetings and those interviews and, like I was able to build rapport. I had a certain level of skill set that allowed me to at least put myself in a position to win. And I figured if I can do it in that space, then I can definitely do it in the space that I love, because, I should be even better at it, at doing something that I love. So that was my confidence came from that. And then while I was in that transition, I eliminated every single distraction that I could possibly think of. And I played this audiobook over and over and over again. It's by Napoleon Hill and it's called Think and Grow Rich. And I literally imprinted that audiobook into my brain. I would every single day, nonstop on repeat. It's all I listened to from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. It was just repeat. And so I was just embracing everything that Napoleon Hill had to say about success and starting out in business and just all of those amazing principles in that book. I really credit that book to me getting off and started because it kept me motivated to do the things that I needed to do. And that's kind of how I was able to get it all going. And it was new and interesting and exciting as well. So that makes it easier. And I was lucky enough that I was good at what I was doing right off the bat because I enjoyed it. It's something that I kind of had experience in on a personal level. So to transfer that personal experience into the business, I think gave me that head start as well. Because, by that time I'm 29 years old. I got a bit of life experience. I got a bit of sense about me. Working in that corporate environment was really great as well, just to teach me how to deal with people and deal with business and just, pull it all together. So I think that my life experience definitely helped me to be able to succeed in that transition, and then just having that courage to build it up. And then it turned out to be an even more successful career than when I was working in IT, and seamlessly easier. Like I always say that I haven't worked a day in my life since I left my IT job. I haven't actually worked, and that was 2008. So I haven't worked a day since 2008 technically. But
Nice.
but I probably worked more and I probably put in more hours and more effort every single day over that time. But it's more rewarding, it's more fulfilling, it's more enjoyable. It's all mine, it's my business, it all comes back to me. So I feel just so much more fulfilled from doing something like that. And so I guess you just got to find your place in the world and what is the best fit for you. And I feel like if you can find that thing that's the best fit for you, then I think everything does kind of come together. And
Mhm.
I feel like I'm in the right space. Like I can't see myself changing careers anytime soon. I feel like this is, I found my groove, and
Yeah.
so I can kind of go with it.
That's outstanding, and I think all of us have a certain book or a tape series or whatever that really was a catalyst for us. And, I really enjoy Napoleon Hill's book as too. And for me, when I was in my lowest point, it was Jack Canfield's 6 cassette series of self-esteem and peak performance. And I literally wore that out. Right. And I'm a little bit older. So we had cassettes. So you'd put in the car, and I
Yeah.
would I just play them until the car would eat the cassette. But we all have that thing that helps drive us, that motivating piece, right? And so
Yeah.
it's so cool to hear what the thing that really drives us forward. Now,
Yeah.
along the way here, you must have come across some key principles that has helped you, especially in this fitness and health world. So tell me a little bit about what are the key principles that you teach people about their health and well-being, and how should they look at implementing them in their life?
Yeah, so I try and keep things as simple as possible because I find that people are easily overwhelmed with new information, and a lot of the people that seek out help from a fitness professional are generally people that don't overly have a lot of experience in that health and fitness space. So somebody like myself, for example, when I was 14 years old, I was reading the health and fitness magazines out of just a general interest, whereas the people I work with don't have that background. They weren't reading those magazines in the 90s. So it's definitely comes down to keeping everything very simple, very basic, very structured. So I like to have a good structure in the day. So I try and set people up to win with just little wins in the beginning of the day. So you wake up early in the morning, and actually having a time to wake up. So not just waking up because you have to get up and go to work, but actually having a little bit of space to do a few things before you have to, go to work or whatever. So So getting up and going for a walk or doing some kind of morning exercise and just factoring that time in, and just, the same way that, for most of us, when we go to work, we have appointments, we have a calendar, we have, commitments. It's the exact same thing. You're just applying that to your personal life and your personal health. You make the commitment to your training, you put it in your diary like a meeting, and you don't break that meeting. If you're not the type of person to break with your boss, and that is a huge part of it. It's just general organization and putting yourself first. A lot of people struggle to put themselves first, so by being able to do that, then you can start to build habits and momentum. And that's really the name of the game is momentum. So if you can start to stack those little wins continuously and go every single day, that's when you see incredible results. And it's simple things like drinking water, eating healthy. We follow a macronutrient, calorie restricted diet plan based on your metabolism, and then simple basic exercises. It could be, and it's, taking the client from where they are to where they need to be. Some people can only walk. That's all they can manage because of whatever situation they're in. And that's perfect. That's where you start. And then you just progress from there. And I generally like to get people in the weights room, lifting weights. I find that has the best outcome for people mentally and physically when they're doing some form of resistance training. So a combination of resistance training, staying hydrated, and staying within a calorie limit and not overdoing it on the food, and then just building that routine where you're just consistent every day. And I find that if you just put those pieces together, it sounds super simple, but it's a challenge to implement. But once you stack them up, and once you get a little bit of time under your belt, your whole life changes, your body changes, your mindset changes, the way you think changes, who you see yourself as changes, everything changes.
Just love that. I love that because let's face it, it took years for us to get to where we are today. Yeah, I think when we think about our health and our fitness level, we think, well, if I eat well for a week and I go to the gym for a week, why haven't I lost 20 pounds? Well,
100%.
It took years to get that on. It's going to take time. It's going to take commitment. And I really like how you talk about scheduling things and putting yourself first. And how often do we not do that in life, where we just don't put ourselves first and everything else is more important? And that's how we finally get into that low part in our lives, isn't it? And we end up by not really following through.
Yeah, before you know it, things have just built up and you're in a bad place.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you've had lots of clients and going through. When you think about all the things and you're teaching them the principles and they're moving forward, what are you seeing as the biggest struggles that they're going through and overcoming their health challenges? Is it the commitment level? Is it nutrition? Is it a combination of both? What are you seeing as their biggest challenges?
It's definitely both of those things. People underestimate the power of nutrition. People think that they can go and start exercising. Like the first thing that people look towards is exercise when they want to change their body, when really they should be looking towards their dietary changes first. I think that's where you get the bang for your buck. So for anybody out there who wants to make a significant change and you want the highest return on your investment for time, it is to look towards your nutrition. So I think that's where a lot of people don't quite really see that full benefit. Like everybody knows you have to eat healthy to be healthy, but to really see significant changes, it has to be priority number one. But I think the main issue is the mindset for people. It's the transition, because if you're living a particular way, that way that you live is based off the mindset that you're in at that time. And so if you want to change the way you live, you first have to change your mindset. So there's this great psychological model, I guess you could call it, that I like to follow, and it's called Be, Do, Have, or the Be, Do, Have model, which you might be familiar with. And that's where you first need to ask yourself, who do I need to be? It's all about the be. It's not so much about the doing, whereas most people try to jump to the doing first. But if we look towards the being, who do we need to become? So for example, if you aspire to be like somebody in terms of their health or their fitness or their level at business or success or whatever the particular area is, but let's just stick to health, then you need to look at that person and say, well, like, how can I be more like them in order to have the things that they have? Because in order to do so, say you pick somebody who's like a fitness expert or somebody who's just basically like tick that box, they are a certain person, and based on who they are, they do certain things. So you need to kind of reverse engineer that and say to yourself, well, who do I need to be in order to do the things that I need to do so that I can have the things that I want to have, which is the health and the fitness, as opposed to going backwards and saying, I just want to have this weight loss, or I just want to have this body, or I just want to have this energy. And once I have it, then I'll do the things, and then I'll have, and then I'll be that person. So we need to flip it around the other way. I think that's a great psychological sort of, I guess, technique that we can use is to first think about who you need to become.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once we have that vision of what we aspire to become, and that can come in many different ways. Some people makes it work for them if they do vision boards. Others can do it through a meditation practice. I think the technique is not important, but it's you're hit the nail on the head. I think it's how we envision our lives to be. It gives us that opportunity to step forward into that, and then we can get that then we can take that chance to really make a change, a profound change in our lives. Now, you talked also about nutrition being so important, and so I got to ask you: is a calorie a calorie, or do we really need to? Because you talked about restricted diet, and so I'll just use myself as an example. I'm about 220 pounds here. I'd like to lose about 25 pounds. It should be about 5'9", 5'10", 5 feet, 10 inches. I could drop a little bit of weight. So if I look at a lot of these apps, I'll say, hey, okay, I'll to maintain, I should have around 2,200 calories. So I want to be in a deficit. So I decide I'm going to run a 1,900 calorie day. Does it matter what I put into my body in those to make those 1,900 calories, or do I really need to be paying attention to the macros and which are the ones that are most important?
Yeah, I think you need to pay attention to the macros as well. You will see some level of results just by getting into a deficit. Like you could eat KFC technically and stay within your 1,900 calories, and you'll probably see a little bit of weight loss. You won't feel that great. You won't feel that healthy, and over time it'll be hard to sustain that. But so yeah, the macros are important. Most people it just goes straight over their head when we start talking about macros, but I can just break it down for you very fast and very simple. There's 3 macronutrients. There's proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. These equal for example, however many calories as a carbohydrate and the protein in a gram of fat as there is for carbs and protein. And what I guess science has found out over the years is that our metabolisms don't necessarily slow down as we age. It's just that we tend to lose muscle mass over age. And so if we can maintain as much muscle mass as possible, then our metabolism should virtually stay the same, even when we're in our 60s. So the main thing is to make sure you're hitting a optimal level of protein intake. And so, I mean, for adults, you're looking at somewhere around 100 grams of protein as a general rule. Maybe like above 80 for women, but anywhere between 80 and 150 for adults, depending on, again, like your height and your weight and things like that. But that is a key indicator. You don't want your fats to be too high, and your carbs can be moderate. You'll find that the carbohydrates will depend based on the output of your day. So if you're really quite sedentary, then you might find that you don't crave as many. Or if you're exercising a lot, like if you look at a CrossFit athlete, for example, they're having like 4,000, 5,000 calories a day, but they're training 4 or 5 times a day, or maybe 6 hours a day or more. So they're constantly refueling. So it all comes down to the output that you're putting in. Like you mentioned for yourself, it was somewhere around that 2,200 calorie mark in order for you. And then if you were to go into 1,900, that would be a deficit. So that's perfect. That's a great strategy for somebody like yourself. You want to drop a few pounds, stick to somewhere. I would probably put you on about 1,800 calories, but 1,900 would work as well. And anywhere under 2,000 basically. And then I would put you on about 150 to 160 grams of protein, maybe 200 grams of carbohydrates. And then I'd keep your fats down probably at about between 40 and 50 grams a day. And then you will see a significant change in your body. And that is, of course, with training as well. So you would train at least once a day, get a walk in, try and get 10,000 steps a day. So it's very, very simple when you look at it on paper, particularly when you're working with, a personal trainer or somebody like what I do. where it's all laid out for you, where we say, okay, this is the calories to eat every day. This is how much grams of protein, how much grams of carbs, how much grams of fat. Here's the meals that you can eat. Here's the exercise that I want you to do when you go to the gym. Do this exercise, this exercise, this exercise, and go for a walk as well. And drink this much water as well. So when you kind of like tie it all in, it's a nice little package. And then your goal, or your, I guess, the work that you have to do is the implementation and the structuring that into your 24 hours. So obviously we've, got children and dogs and, work and so much to do, but, you got to do it. So I always think back in the day, like 200 years ago, or even less, I remember my great grandmother, before she passed away, she used to always tell stories about how she grew up on a farm and how, they had to wash the clothes through like this everything was, and so it's like part of it is also to be factored in. And then once you factor it in, you find it works. Like anything can work if you factor it in. It's just it's the transition that people struggle with, and accepting it in their mind as well, that they have to do this, and believing that it will make that change. A lot of people, they'll implement something for a short period of time. They won't see the results because they haven't stuck to it long enough. And then they give up on it because they tell themselves that that doesn't work, or it doesn't work for them, or for whatever excuse they can come up with. When you have somebody in your corner, like a coach or a trainer, there's a little bit more faith behind the method to the madness to the method, so to speak. So if I give somebody a plan and say, look, this plan works really, really well, you just got to do it, then you can have a little bit more faith in that. It's like, no, Jai told me that this plan works. I've just got to do it. And if I do it, it'll work, because they're having belief in somebody other than themselves. And sometimes we need that to get started. We need to have a belief in something external, that's something that we know that will work regardless of who we are as a person, because we've all got past failures as well. And those past failures come back and they say to us, oh, but remember last time when you tried to lose weight and it didn't work? And remember last time you wanted to build muscle? And remember last time you went on a diet and you failed? And so all these things play on our minds and start to bring our confidence down and our belief down. So again, going back to what I originally said, it's the mindset first. And so sometimes we do need to have that external thing, or, trick ourselves in some way to build that structure, have that plan so that we can execute it. And then the consistency brings the result.
I totally agree. And I think it's important that, that's a great point you bring forward, that we will have those stories that play in our mind of when we weren't successful. And those are the ones that are going to come first. And being able to lean on someone that has a coach who has the track record, that can guide you through it, and just trusting and faith in that, in what you're given, instead of us coming up with it on our own and then questioning it all the time, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And so I completely agree with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Now, listen, you've had lots of lessons learned, I'm sure, from running multiple six-figure businesses over the past decade. Tell me a couple of lessons that really stood out for you that helped you be as successful as you are in the fitness world.
I think leadership is probably one of the biggest ones. Like, I started reading a lot of books on leadership and personal development, and I think that's where, when I look back over the years and when things didn't go the way I wanted them to go, had a failure somewhere along the way, I can always point it back to my lack of leadership. And so, whether that's managing staff or, making the right decisions or whatever it may be. And so I think that just having those leadership skills, and a big part of leadership is having the vision. And seeing where everything falls into place. So when you've got that big picture vision, that long-term vision, then you can kind of reverse engineer it backwards and then work out exactly what pieces need to be put where. And I feel like that when I was getting started, that's where I didn't have that full insight, because I came from this T space where I was a technician. So I was a network security engineer. So I was configuring devices. I wasn't working with teams and leading people or anything like that. And I'd never run a business before either. So going into the fitness industry from being a technician, it's literally polar opposites, because now I'm managing my like clients, individual people on a personal level, as opposed to just, configuring a firewall or setting up a server or doing something like that. So all of those skills had to be learned. And the only way you can learn them is by doing them and by failing through them. And that's how I found to be the fastest way. And I think that it's also the thing that gives us the most progress is the thing that holds us back as well, because we don't want to fail. We all have this innate fear to fail and to be seen as a failure, or to be seen as taking a step back, or to be seen as not being great at something. But that is where we actually need to be. Otherwise, we'll never progress further than where we are right now. And I'm sure that everybody listening to this wants to progress in some part of their life beyond where they are today. And the only way to do that is to get out there and fail forward, and to potentially be seen as not the expert, maybe for once in your life, but it's absolutely necessary. And I think just having that vulnerability is a huge one. So having the vulnerability and focusing on that leadership mindset, I think, and having that big vision, I think they're the kind of the three things that will help anybody as a blanket sort of term to move forward with whatever area that in their life that they want to succeed in.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, that vulnerability part is a big one, really resonates with me, because we can be so prideful in that we just don't want to lean into something and fail. And so we won't take the steps that we need to in order to go forward. Yet we have such passion for this idea, this business, and then we choose to allow our limiting beliefs to self-sabotage, and then we don't really accomplish what we were set to accomplish.
100%.
Throughout these years, I'm sure you must have had a mentor or two along the way. What would you say would be as the best piece of advice that someone has given you, and how does it still serve you today?
Yeah, I've had many business coaches and personal coaches over the years, and a lot of them say the same stuff. They just present it in a different way. And I think that the best thing that has helped me more than anything is consistency. Even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, just be consistent with even imperfect action is the way forward, rather than trying to make things perfect. Because I think a lot of people, when they're starting out on a new project or a new venture or a new, whatever it is, life path, they want all of the ducks to line up in a row before they take the execution. And I think that is definitely not the way to go. And people kind of refer back to being perfectionists or wanting to make it perfect or whatever, but that's just a side effect of procrastination. And it's ultimately, procrastination is what we're doing because we don't have all of our ducks lined up, because we don't know the full outcome of what it's going to be, nor will you ever know. So I think just taking imperfect action and doing that every day, it just leads to the momentum that you need. Because even if you're stuffing up along the way, you just learn, as I said before, you just learn so much faster by stuffing up and making errors. And that's what helps you just, fumble forward, basically.
Love that. Love that. With our closing question here, I'm going to ask you, I ask all my guests, of everything that we've had a chance to touch on today, and maybe there wasn't something we got to really speak about, what would be the one takeaway you'd want our listeners to have?
I think it is to turn your past pain or your past experiences into your purpose in your life. So I think, like, a lot of people get a little bit confused as to the path they should be taking, and they are limited within themselves by their past as well. It's like, I can't do this because of that. So whereas I like to take that pain, take those failures, take those things that you've gone through, the hard times, and that is your resume. That is what says that you can do it. Like, most people will say, I can't do this because of this, but that's why you can do it, because you've failed at certain things. You've gone through these tough times, and that has what has brought you to the place that you are at right now, which is the place where you're ready to move forward. So I think that turning those pain points and turning just that general pain into purpose, and then making that our life purpose. And I think that is probably something moving forward that will help to encourage people to just go and take that shot at whatever it is they want to accomplish, even if they don't think that they're in the right position to do it, because we're all in the right position to do it ultimately.
Man, I just love that. What a great way to close out our conversation to here today, Jai. I just really appreciate you spending time with me today. And you've been able to show us that we are so much more than our stories, and that we can change our lives if we're truly willing to do the work. And so, if men, as we focus on men on this podcast, if men are interested in getting a hold of you to participate in your work, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Probably Instagram, where I'm the most active, and you can find me on Instagram at SQ1FitnessAUS. Or if you wanted to see my programs and how they work, so I have a group coaching program and a one-on-one coaching program, and they are both available on my website, which is sq1fitness.com.au. So they're probably the best two places to find me.
Perfect. I want to make sure that information's in the show notes so folks can get a chance to reach out to you, and I really encourage them to do. What a great conversation we had today. And just want to say once again, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alan. It was great to be here, man.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.